Hey everyone, let's get into the video. We're going to go over some crazy stocks like CoreWeave and some aviation stocks, because if we look at the market, we pretty much are not moving anywhere. I mean, we have been stuck in a tight range off the Liberation Day lows, and we're right back into some value. So what's next? I don't know, but what I do know is those junky stocks that I gave you are just moving absolutely bonkers. If we look at names like CoreWeave here, you know, we've doubled in the past 2 weeks on this stock and more, actually almost a triple. Some of those names we've also talked about. Joby Aviation with less regulation. These are names that Joby and Archer that are just going crazy on volume. Archer is the one that makes the drones out there, so less regulation with the FAA. Norwegian Cruise, at 30,000 lot of those calls. Look at that clean breakout here. Those calls are rocking and rolling. They bought the calls. You can look at them when we did this one live. Those SEP 20 calls on June 4th, and look what happened to the stock from 18 to 20 plus we've hit there. But also, if you look at those retailers, they're starting to make a pretty large move. Look at Target, finally having 2 big up days in a row. Closed some calls on that today. Costco, this one's been a powerhouse, big move after earnings and then gave it all back. But even your semis have came back to life. If we look at Super Micro, we're starting to coil up here, look for a breakout there. If we look at also names like Micron, look at this slow move to the upside. I shouldn't say slow because it's been super aggressive, but I mean slowly creeping and not on anyone's radar. And it's the same for AMD. So these undercover darlings are making big moves and no one's talking about, and that's the same with Palantir. Yeah, they had their big down day with Tesla that day when those stocks got crushed, but look at the strength. Right back up, filled the gap. So if you're thinking about making the case, and I'm right there with you, that the markets should, reset, come back down, and the VIX needs to pop, I agree. I mean, the VIX being down here is miserable. VIX was up 5%, now it's only up 2.5% because there's no vol. And look at the tight range in most underlying stocks. But I also say, well, what causes the market to go down? China, beautiful. I mean, we're right back near 52-week highs in FXI, the large cap China ETF. We look at gold. Gold has stabilized, not doing much, right? Just flagging. Okay. Bonds, yeah, they had their breakdown, but they've been holding. So what's the catalyst? We've seen long-dated Microsoft calls. Remember, we took these in the option pit, that $20 million trade for the December 500s. I mean, look at these. So I don't know what causes a pullback. And that's the scary part, because we could just see a low volume, what we call a melt up in the markets, where we just kind of grind higher for no reason. I mean, look at the Qs, we're right back near highs. So the one thing I am looking at, and I have a lot of skin in the game in, is small caps. That's the Russell 2000. So if you look at some of these like aviation stocks, the little banks, energy stocks, Oxy's making a nice move here as well. They're starting to actually trend. So instead of, let's say, the SPY or the Dow, which isn't moving, small caps do have a lot of upside in terms of air. We have pretty much all the way back up to here. So that's about, let's just say 225-ish on the IWM, without any kind of getting stuck in traffic, so to speak, like the S&P, where we're just doing nothing. And you can see it's leading today up over 0.5%, while the S&P is relatively flat on the day. So that, and then I'm also looking at mid caps. They're kind of boring, I know. You can look at JHMM or MDY, but they would, small caps, mid caps. Maybe if we get some tax news, stuff like that, that will be good for these smaller companies. And energy is starting to look a little bit better. Tesla, obviously, vol is insane on this one with all the Musk stuff, so been avoiding that one. But quite frankly, there's not a lot to do. Had Baba calls that did well, and then taking profits on pop. So there's really just not much to do anymore in the market. Google, nice move to the upside. You can see, if they really get the market going, you're going to have Google and Amazon creep up higher. And then we're going to be at all-time highs, and then it's going to be, what do we do? And I feel like we're already there right now. So Amazon, speaking of retailers, remember we saw those June 13th calls, 215s. Those are obviously doing fantastic. Those have tripled, since doing them last week. So that's really it. If you're not participating, I fully understand that. If you're waiting for a pullback, I would say be patient, but we may never get one. Even stocks like Boeing, which is a big Trump stock, look at these moves. I mean, some of this is just insane. So if you were on the sidelines the past few months, it feels safe to get in, but when it feels safe to get in, it's usually the worst time to get in. So there's no easy money to be made. There's no free lunch, as they say in the financial markets, and that's never been truer than now. So if you aren't involved, today I'm pretty much flat, my complete book. I have no real positions on anymore. And I'm comfortable with that. I would love to see, a couple weeks of a pullback, a VIX over 20 again and stuff like that for markets to get some rhythm. But until then, probably just gonna take my hands, handcuff them, or if I am clicking the pointer, I'm doing cheap options under 50 cents and, doing 20, 50 lots, something small, just putting no real risk out there in the markets. And if I do miss a lot of moves to the upside, so be it. That's a risk I'm comfortable with taking. And that's the most important thing. Whatever the market does, just be comfortable, be confident, and try to limit that FOMO as much as possible.